Hey everybody and welcome back. I'm Dr. Butler and today we're going to be covering more of investing and spending and earning, just everything financial in terms of how the world is moving. Welcome to the MD Investor Podcast. Let's go. So today this is what I really want to talk about is inflation and Walmart. So you guys might be thinking, why am I talking about Walmart on an investing podcast? Well, it's easy because Walmart has had a statement that they put out recently in a new article, what they did with CNBC, and it's stating that families have started going back to Walmart. When I say families, I don't mean every family, I mean wealthier families. So a lot of people in the world have been snubbing Walmart or looking down on it. So Walmart is usually considered a store that a lot of people on a lowbrow circuit go to because it's cheap, it's convenient, they're everywhere. They're just huge department stores. Now what Walmart has stated that is their growth this past 2 years have been exponentially building, and it's mostly by wealthier families. They're saying people who are six-figure earners and higher, families who are making over 100,000, over 200,000 are now starting to shop at Walmart on a regular basis. And what does that mean? It means that prices are so high and people are getting crushed by inflation because it's been higher than it's been in the last 40 years. So does that mean whether or not we're going to go into something called stagflation? That is something that we have to talk about. So inflation is just the rising cost of living that's happened. And the reason this has happened is because one is COVID has progressed all of these things. During COVID, we had a change in administration. And then during that change in administration, we had a influx of money come in, right? Billions and billions of dollars have been helped to help hospitals, to help companies, to help all these businesses that were going under. And in reality, we had two choices. One is let those businesses and the capitalism from that collapse, or we can try to save that progress by actually pouring money into it. The issue with pouring money into it is that it leads to inflation. And we've had inflation as high as 9.1%, which is the highest it's been in 40 years. So think about that. In 40 years, this is the highest inflation has ever been, meaning that every single person who's under about the $300,000 mark is starting to live close to paycheck, something that we talked about in the last video. But the reason I bring Walmart in is because a lot of people feel some kind of way about shopping at Walmart. A lot of people like higher end stores. Maybe they like, Target, which is like the upscale cousin of Walmart, if you will. And people like to go to higher end stores even more so. So if you make more money, for example, like physicians, like we do, then you probably don't do a lot of your grocery shopping at Walmart. Maybe you go to Trader Joe's, or maybe you go to a unique organic food store near you where the cost of things are still continuing to rise. Maybe you were buying pasta before and that pasta was like $5 for some pasta, but now it's $8. These things are happening over and over again. And I remember when you can go to the store and buy a bag of chips and the chips were like $2.50. Now the chips are like almost $6. They're like $5.40 for some chips. In that case, that means everything is costing more. Now, how do we beat inflation? Is everybody out there shopping at Walmart now? Like, even for myself, doesn't matter. I make good money. And in this case, I still shop at Walmart. Why? Because that's not really my preference. Like, I don't care if things are high end. I don't care if they're brand recognition. I don't care if things look nice. Like, I've already learned that hard lesson with money death traps. Like, I don't want to have all Gucci clothes and look like I'm rich. I don't care about looking rich. I care about being rich. In order to be rich, you have to use your money in a savvy manner. In this case, even my t-shirts, right? My t-shirts, I don't put brands on a lot of things, or at least I try not to, because I'm not looking for high scale. And if you're in that same boat, you might not be looking for high scale. You might not be looking for status either. But is this a Walmart economy? If we're going into a recession, which all signs point to yes, we're headed for a recession. Yes, we have sky high inflation. Is investing going to be what helps you beat these things? So in my idea, yes, it has to be. So in a down market, what do you do in the stock market? You play a down market. If things are trailing down or if they're starting to trend down, then you sell the stocks. And in this case, while you're selling the stocks, you're making money from people who are buying them at higher prices. Now, a lot of people don't look at the major over trend of something. And what I mean by that is, if you don't know which way the market is trending, then you're buying when people are selling and you're selling when people are buying. And sometimes that is a perfect strategy. However, if you're doing it at the wrong time, it is a strategy that leads to catastrophe. And a lot of people are in that boat. Now, in this case, I make money when the stocks fall. I make money when the stocks go up because I always want to be with the cycle. And in this case, I want to do the same thing with my everyday life. So if Walmart is being able to cut the cost of prices because there's such a huge distribution center, then great. I'm going to shop at Walmart. It's perfectly fine for me because it's going to give me the essentials and I can cut on some of the costs. So like, why go to Target and pay $10 for bread when I can go to Walmart and pay $6 for the same bread? It's going to be expensive either way it goes, but at least it's going to get the job done. And I've noticed this at a lot of stores too, because I recently what do you call it? Transplanted. There you go. Transplanted. I recently transplanted from being in California to being in Georgia. This was also a strategic move, right? So I wanted to leave where the taxes was the highest, where the inflation was hitting the hardest, and where that zip code was in Los Angeles. It's more expensive. So in this case, if I want to make sure that my wealth lasts, if I'm not giving it back to the government, if I'm not giving it back to all of this cost of living things, then I can enjoy my wealth and my time longer. That means that I don't have to work as frequently. I don't have to do a lot of extra things. I get to enjoy my money and enjoy the cost of living by making adjustments. So some people don't want to make adjustments, or some people can't make adjustments. But if you can, this is going to be something that's going to hedge and make sure that you have more time to enjoy. So with that being said, well, actually, it is hot now that I actually say it out loud. Being in Georgia is a lot more humid than being in California. California is like dry heat, but here is like more humid. Anyway, like I was saying, the reason this is something that's super important is because if we're going into stagflation, which is even higher than inflation, meaning if we go from 9% inflation to 12% to 15%, just think about everything in your life costing 15% more. The issue with that is when recessions happen, insurance costs go up, everything costs goes up. So that means even if you're running your own business, you're running your own practice, you're doing whatever you're doing as a physician, your costs are going to get more exponentially expensive. And if your costs get expensive, how are you going to hedge that or cut that? This is why I focus on investing to try to beat the market. Now, on average, if we're talking about stocks, you're looking for a return something between 6%, 9% on a regular basis. And that's if you're just letting stocks sit. Now, if you're going to be trading stocks, then it's going to be a little bit different, because when you're trading stocks, what's happening here is you're trying to make profit on either a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, something that can counteract the cost of living. And that's also what I try to do as well. I want something to offset the fact that we're in sky high inflation. And if we get to stagflation and more families are shopping at Walmart, then a lot of mom and pop stores are also going to suffer because they have to charge more in order to remain competitive versus a huge national distributed company like Walmart. But they're seeing so much growth. And the reason they're seeing so much growth is because people are struggling, which means wealth is always going to be built in recessions. So you've probably heard that, right? When there's blood in the street, that's where you make money. That's when you buy. So in this case, since a recession is on the way, since inflation is higher than it's ever been, this is going to be the best time to start investing. So when properties are going to be easier to acquire, or possibly a better entry to acquire, because money is made on entry. Money is not made on the sale, money is made on the entry. So in this case, if properties become more obtainable because less people have the ability to purchase them, then I'm going to step in and take over these properties. And when I do that, that is my entry point. That is where I start making my money, if that makes sense. And because of that, when we come out of the market of a recession, it might take 3 to 5 years or so. But once we start coming out of that recession and inflation starts to curve itself, then the cost of things start to increase, but they increase in a more fair and profitable way. That's when I'm going to take over, because now what happens when there's another recession, or what happens when a recession occurs? When recessions occur, things like rent go up, right? It's not cheaper, it's more expensive. Right? So your rent cost has been going up. Your mortgage cost might have been going up, unless you have a fixed rate mortgage, which is fantastic in this case. But for the average person who's renting a home, the rent is continually going up. So if I'm purchasing these properties, rent's not getting cheaper, rent's getting more expensive, which means it's going to be harder and harder for people who are millennials or people who are in our generation to try to purchase homes. So if you're in your like 30s or your early 20s or even in your early 40s and you were looking to be in the market to purchase a home, you might still be struggling. And that might get harder and harder over time. So you might hear all of these cliche things like, don't wait to buy property and wait. And that's true. And the reason that it's true is because properties are going to be harder to obtain, and a lot of them are going to be institutional. And a lot of institutional people are going to take over these properties, making it difficult. So the reason I wanted to talk about all of these things together is because they all connect to how the market works, and they all connect to how investing works. So if there's a recession in the market, guess what that means? That means that inflation is going to keep taking over. And if inflation takes over to try to hedge what's happening, then things have to cool off. Things have to go down. But that doesn't affect the cost of living. The cost of living will increase as things become more expensive, which is going to be a little bit difficult to manage. So think about that. If you're working as a hospitalist, if you're working as a GI doctor, if you're working as a cardiologist, if you're a nurse practitioner, whatever it may be, if you're a six-figure earner and your salary is not increasing by at least 3%, you're still going to lose, which means that every single year, if inflation remains close to 9%, every single year that we go forward, you're taking a 6% tax cut. How are you going to make up for that difference? If you're taking a 6% tax cut, you have to actually find a way to make up the difference. Because if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you just took a 6% tax cut, sooner or later you're going to be under the gun. And if we hit stagflation to where now all of a sudden you're taking a 6%, an 8%, a 10% tax cut, if you're making $260,000 a year and then $26,000 just disappears because the cost of living is making up the difference, you have to find a way to make up that difference. So this is why I'm strongly into passive income. And this is also why I'm strongly into investing. I need something to always keep up with or supersede my cost of living. If it's not happening, if it's not there, then we have a problem. And that's always going to be an issue because whether you have a single family income or if you have a spouse maybe you have a spouse who's also a physician or someone else who works in the hospital. Maybe you're a doctor and you're married to a nurse, or maybe you're a nurse and you're married to a doctor, or maybe you're both nurses. Whatever it may be, if you're in the healthcare profession, you have a good job, you have a good salary. The good thing about being in medicine is it's usually recession proof, meaning that you can't get replaced so easily. Right? It's not like if you were working at a factory and that factory all of a sudden had robots. Now, there is something in medicine that's like more technology based, but in this case, at the end of the day, there's still that human interaction, human touch. Most people aren't comfortable to the point where it's like you'll have a completely AI hospital. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Maybe someday in the future, maybe 20 years from now, we'll have a complete AI hospital. But as of now, you still have that interaction. The only downside to this interaction, though, is that it takes up all of your time, which means that if you're using all of your time to work, you do not have free time to actually do other things that are going to help you make up the difference. So in this case, this is why I no longer work a full-time job. Having a full-time job was fantastic in the beginning, and I thought, hey, this is what's gonna bring me wealth. This is what's gonna make me super rich. But that wasn't the case, right? So we talked about that over and over again. It wasn't the case. I was working like 20 plus shifts. I think the most shifts I've ever done at one time was like maybe 40 shifts in a row. Like literally like a month and a half straight I was working, and I was like, okay, this is how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna work nonstop. I'm gonna be able to pay off all my bills, pay off all my debt. And that wasn't the case. I was just burnt out and exhausted. And at the end of it, I just got crushed by taxes anyway. So I thought, okay, this is going to be great. And it wasn't great. It was just really hard. And I was mentally burned out and I was physically burned out. And even talking about being burned out, like being burned out is something that also has to do with how you feel personally and how you're dealing with life in general. If finances are constantly stressing you, if you're constantly feeling under the gun and under the pressure, you're going to have to work more. And if you're working more and more and more, if you have children, if you have kids on the way, if you're just trying to provide as much as you can for your family or just for yourself, and you're realizing that you're like, I need this, I need that, then it increases the amount of stress. And then you feel obligated to work. And if you feel obligated to do anything, then you don't want to do it. But if you do things out of love, you do things out of passion, then you truly, truly enjoy it. So, like learning about stocks, learning about real estate, learning about e commerce and transportation, this was something that I truly enjoyed learning. And a lot of times, as physicians, once we're done and we get into the field of medicine, we keep learning, but we only keep learning about medicine. And the world is so much bigger than that. And you can actually enjoy way more of the world if you learn about being passionate about being able to give services to other people. So if people really want to learn about investing, great. That's what I want to teach them because that's what they really want to learn about. If they really want to learn about cars and rentals and things of that nature, then great. That's what I want to teach them because that's what I'm passionate about also. In this case, the reason why we bring up Walmart in the first place, the reason we talk about all of this is because the way of the way of economics is changing. And it's changing for us because it hasn't been like that for the last 40 years. Sky high inflation is something that hasn't happened for the last 40 years, which means the generation before us wasn't suffering from this. The generation before them wasn't really suffering from this. The generation before that had the Great Depression, so they definitely understand what it's like, right? But in this case, it's been almost 100 years. So the Great Depression happened, what, in the 1920s, something of that nature? And now we're in the 2020s. 100 years later, we're having another cycle of a major depression. So if a major depression happens or a major recession happens and it turns into a depression, how are you going to be prepared? Are you invested? Do you own property to where people still need a place to live? So if rents are going up, if prices are going up, I want those people to be able to pay me. I want to provide a service. I want to help them. I want them to have a place to live. But at the same time, it's still a business and I want that business to function profitably. In this case, this is how we're going to keep up with inflation. This is how we're actually going to make sure that we can build our wealth and we can continue to build our wealth for future generations. Because if it's not controlled, someone's going to own it. It doesn't matter if it's you or not, but I choose for it to be me. Instead of me spending all of my time only working for a salary, I need to make sure that the money coming into me is going to other assets that will always cash flow in my favor. And I want the same thing to be for all of us. I want it to be for you. I want you to be able to get your first property. I want you to be able to buy your first stocks and make sure that you're making income. I want you to be able to buy those nice luxury cars and really enjoy it and not have to be like, oh, I have this amazing Porsche. Matter of fact, that reminds me. My neighbor has a beautiful Porsche 911, okay? It's been sitting in his garage. I've never seen him move it at all. Like he doesn't drive it. He doesn't take it out. It's just there. It's just like he has this beautiful, immaculate car and he just doesn't drive it whatsoever. And I don't know the reason between that, but for myself, if I'm going to buy something luxury, it should make sense. Like I don't want to just have an amazing car and it sits in my garage and it's just collecting dust. Like it's a beautiful car, but it's dusty and it's just sitting there. And I'm like, why don't you take it out for a drive? Why don't you take it out for a spin? And most people are like, well, gas is expensive. If that's the case, then if gas is costing you too much and you can't enjoy a joyride, like a joyride or something like that, then you have to do something that's going to offset that. So if you have a property and that property is paying you well, or if you have cars that you're renting out and those cars are renting well, now you can actually enjoy your lifestyle instead of feeling like you're always stressing out. Like, what am I going to do about my finances? How am I going to pay this next bill? How am I going to do any of these things? Just know that things are working in your favor. And as long as you keep learning about finances, you learn about using the financial principles, and you think about the core principles, you don't have to just survive. You can move into growth, right? Because those core principles are broken up into surviving and growth. And as long as you understand growth, you can keep up with things like inflation, because inflation is going to hinder your growth. And if you're stuck in the survival phase, it's going to mess up everything. So just a quick recap about survival and growth. What I'm talking about is still the 6 core principles. If you're just being able to understand the 6 core principles, you haven't started growing yet, right? So the 6 core principles, let's just really quickly talk about them. The earning, the saving, and the spending. These are things that are in the survival category only, right? So if the money that you're earning is from a single income, then okay, you're earning a single income. You don't have any extra coming in. And if you're spending some of that money or most of that money just to survive, then you're done anyway. And then what you're saving, that's all just helping you survive. But if you want to grow, you want to build wealth, you have to understand how to borrow, how to invest, and how to protect. That's how you grow true wealth for generations. So make sure that you're not just surviving during sky high inflation, make sure that you're still growing. Because when recessions happen, millionaires are born and billionaires are born because they utilize the market properly. So I wanted to give you this information because it's something that when the article popped up, I'm like, we got to talk about this. I want to make sure that all my doctors and my friends out there are able to have this information. They can build from it and it can help them grow. As always, I wish you guys the best. I wish you health, wealth, and happiness. I'm the MD Investor. Feel free to go to mdinvestor.com because if you need help, we're here to help you grow. If you need help understanding and how to get into the market, then let us do that. We have books, we have whatever you need in order to learn what is there to help you grow and build to your best next self. I want you guys to be financially free. I want you to have time freedom, and I want you to enjoy your lives. As always, I'll see you guys next time. Have a great one.